Hello and welcome to the Golden Sports Report, episode 84. You probably can't see my face, and if you can, I won't flip off the camera, but Dylan and Chris can't see me. I'm Andy.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Chris.
And today we will talk about the Bills because the Bills suffered their first loss at the hands of the San Diego Chargers today. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the games that are going on around the NFL. The Super Bowl rematch just ended. And it was a lot more competitive than the first time around. So that's good to see. And if we have time, we'll talk about the Sabres preseason, first looks at lines that Nolan might want to, mix and match with. So first, we'll talk about the Bills game. I went, and I'll tell you, they look as bad in person as they do on TV. However, the seats were amazing, so I can't complain about that. I always go last. So, Chris, what was your feelings on the game? Positives, negatives? What were your thoughts?
Well, positives. I don't know. Let's see. No, that's not what I want. Hold on, I'm bringing up some stats here. Because, well, our running game looked pretty good. Kind of. Well, our check down game looked really good. Fred Jackson had 8 catches for 78 yards. E.J. Manuel didn't throw an interception. That's a positive. What else is a positive? Scott Chandler did okay today. I saw him catch one ball. Unfortunately, I was doing a hockey draft, so I wasn't able to watch the whole thing. But I saw enough of it. CJ looked like CJ. He was making some plays. I saw Aaron Williams get hurt. That's kind of a negative. But other than that, Preston Brown still looks really good. Can't really think of very many positives. Well, we kept, I wouldn't say in check, but we defended pretty well against San Diego's offense for the most part. That we just we fell apart. That's all the positives I can think about. Do you want me to do negatives, or are we going back around for those?
We'll go back around. We'll split it up. Dylan,
basically.
what negatives are you taking away from this game, Mr. Optimistic?
With negatives? Aren't we starting with positives?
No. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a wraparound. So each of us will go say our negatives, and then each of us will say our positives.
I just said my positives, though, because you asked for positives.
Oh,
Andy's
my mistake.
Listening.
Andy, please.
I only have one headphone in. So, Dylan, positives.
Alright, so there are only really a couple positives to try and take from this game. Obviously, we lost 2-1 now. But San Diego's not a bad team. They did beat the Seahawks last week. And positives, I don't know. Our receivers weren't bad. E.J. Manuel's completion percentage, he was 23 for 39, about 58%. Obviously, you'd like that to be a little bit better. 238 yards isn't terrible, but it could have been better. He didn't throw any interceptions, so that was a positive. Baby steps. Take what you can get sometimes, I guess. But Manuel did have 5 rushing attempts for 24 yards, so that's just under 5. Well, it's 4.8 yards per carry. And I don't know, I guess that shows a little bit that he was, well, you can debate whether he was forced to in some situations, but maybe he was less afraid to actually move the ball with his legs when that sort of situation arose, because there was a lot of times where we saw him and a receiver he was looking for wasn't open or something, so he would just, I guess that I shouldn't talk about that till negatives, but he did have some positive yardage. He had a better yards per carry than C.J. Spiller, and Fred Jackson only had 6 carries for 34 yards. So, but as Chris said, Chandler looked pretty good, made some big catches. He seemed to be our most reliable or consistent target throughout the game today, as opposed to the other guys. And positive, Donald Brown had 31 rushing attempts for 62 yards. We held him to a 2 yards per carry on 30 carries. So there's something good at least to take out of this game. And another positive, Brandon Oliver got a couple carries. UB product right there. And as I mentioned, this is a team that beat the reigning Super Bowl champions by 9 points last week, and we lost to them today by 12. By that logic, we're almost as good as the Seahawks. So, I guess that's my attempt at trying to take the positives out of this game.
Oh. I'm the most negative person in this hangout. I'll say the 2.3 yards per carry allowed was a good bright spot to see for our defense. It looked, at least from the stands, that our defensive line, well, never mind, that's a negative, but our linebackers and Aaron Williams at safety played very well up close to the line to put 8 guys in the box to stop the run, because the linebackers did a great job at tackling. As you can see, the top 3 tacklers, safety Williams 14, Bradham 13, Preston Brown 11. They were all over the field, making sure the run was not a factor. I'm not going to give Gilmore this credit, because frankly, he doesn't deserve this credit. I'll get into that in the negatives. But Keenan Allen had only 2 receptions, and by that logic, Stephon Gilmore is better than Richard Sherman. Ha, 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 ha. Not at all. Not at all. He's a bum. No turnovers, though. That's a plus. No turnovers. Fred Jackson played like a man on a mission. Sure, the checkdown game was great, and it was probably because Fred Jackson was the only that's a negative too. I have to be careful. I have to be careful saying this. Don't want to spoil it. But Fred Jackson played really well and knew what routes to run and knew how to break tackles and finish runs hard and make blocks. And that's a positive. Oldest running back in the league, would make sense, because he's like one of the oldest guys on the team that you would know. He's so good at knowing how to do everything, and that's a positive from this game. EJ, he rushed. He did get flushed, but that's part of the negatives. He only had, I think, one of these rushes was read option. So, You know, a positive, a couple times the wide receivers got open, and I don't want to get into the negatives, but they just didn't end up with the ball at the end. So, you know, that's a thing. But it's a positive. It's a positive. The punter, he averaged quite a lot. How about a San Diego positive besides Brandon Oliver? Cyphers kicked a 72-yard punt today. 72 yards. You can't compete with that. You just can't. You just can't. Dan Carpenter didn't miss a field goal. And yeah, Brandon Oliver. I was upset. Nobody got really excited when Brandon Oliver's name was called. And I was like, oh, I'm excited. Why isn't everybody else excited? That's a shame. So that's my positives from the game. Chris, do you have any negatives from this honorable loss?
Well, we lost. That's the first negative. You know, I don't know. Dylan said it pretty well when he was over earlier doing the draft. He was like, "Oh, Andy's at this game, and I can tell he's just gonna want to bash EJ when he gets on the show tonight." So, yeah, EJ played pretty bad. Like, he didn't technically have any turnovers, but he had a pass that was worse than a turnover because he gave up 2 points automatically and then gave them the ball for that intentional grounding while in the end zone. Negatives, there were so many, defensive, like holding calls or some sort of pass interference. Like, I don't know. They're literally letting nothing go by, and the players need to learn that you can't touch the other receivers. Like, you can't hold them. All you have to do is play their route and hit the ball away. Like, there are so many penalties today. I don't even know an exact number.
11 for 100 yards.
There you go. They went the whole field up and down by penalties. Where is this thing? Negatives. EJ. Sammy Watkins only had 2 catches. I think Robert Wood maybe had 3, if that. For sure, only had 2 too. So EJ was missing wide open receivers, trying to force the pass. He got lucky a couple times that he didn't throw interceptions. He should have had 2 or 3 picks that game. You can tell by the 8 catches by Fred Jackson. I think CJ had 6. You could tell that he was checking the ball down. That's already, 8 and 6. That's 14-year catches right there, and he only had 21 completed passes all game. That means only 7 of them went to your actual receivers. So when he would get sacked, he ran around backwards trying to escape and just kind of took the sack for an 18-yard loss. Like, what is that shit? You don't do that. Throw the ball away. He's done. He made a lot of mistakes this game. He had been playing really well throughout the whole season. I'm not gonna lie, he was doing awesome. Well, he was doing well and making very little mistakes. But today he just flew apart. Our offensive line looked like shit today. We couldn't run the ball very well. We had, Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller had got all their yards basically through the passing game. And, last week we faced Kansas City, who has some of the best, or not Kansas City, Miami, who has Cameron Wake. And they're they've got one of the best pass rushers in the league, and Chargers don't really have anyone good, not anyone elite like Cameron Wake yet. So why we couldn't handle them, it's beyond me. Eddie Royal scorched us for a couple touchdowns. Andy, you said look out for Eddie Royal. We were right about that. I said look out for Ladarius Green, and he had a few big catches for them. We shut down Antonio Gates, but they have two really good tight ends, so you can't just cover one. But yeah, basically the biggest negative was EJ's mistakes. Missing open receivers, trying to force the passes, taking sacks, unnecessary sacks. You saw, this is kind of touching in on something later, but you saw Blake Bortles take over for Chad Henne because, Chad Henne got sacked like, 13 times? I don't remember the exact stat, but it was something like 13 times in the last, 6 quarters. So it was something really ridiculous. I'll look up the stat now, but I'll tell you guys later. But so now Blake Bortles is the starter. He's been named the starter going forward unless something happens. So because Chad Henne just takes too many sacks. So if EJ decides to make, we didn't take a single sack last week, and against Chicago we took a couple, but none of them for an 18-yard loss. EJ did not look comfortable today. Hopefully we can come back next week and be better, but whatever.
Dylan, I know it's going to be hard for you to take negatives from this game, but what negatives did you find in this loss?
I know I'm always positive. Everything's looking up, and going forward we're going to be great. But yeah, there were definitely. I can't say there weren't negatives to this game, obviously. But negatives. We lost. We're 2-1 now. 2-1 is worse than 3-0, as you all understand. But it seemed from the start you could kind of tell, in my opinion, because from my experience watching EJ Manuel, it sort of seems like if he's uncomfortable early on, it's definitely a lot harder for him to become comfortable throughout the game. But whereas in a game, for example, against, I don't remember if it was week 1 or week 2 or both, I remember we received the kickoff, first drive, we took it down the field, got a touchdown, and I was like, that's a confidence-building drive. We're going to have confidence. We're going to go forward through this game knowing that we can go through and score and compete with these guys. And then this game, it just didn't happen. It was pretty ugly right from the start. And, I mean, it wasn't out of reach necessarily at the early stages of the game, but as the game went on and on, you could sort of tell, like, we're not going to make up this ground that we're losing. And it was really unfortunate. Our defense, for as much as we've prided ourselves on how good our defense has been, we only had 1 sack, we didn't have any interceptions, didn't force any fumbles, whereas the San Diego defense had 3 sacks and forced 1 fumble. And I mean, this is coming off, as Chris mentioned, the game against Miami where we didn't allow any sacks. And I know everybody is pointing to EJ Manuel as the reason we lost this game, and I'm not saying that he isn't the but it's a team sport. You can tie this back to EJ, but our rushing game, not that great. Our receiving game, not that great. Our defense wasn't what it had been in the first 2 weeks. And even though we did hold Keenan Allen and Antonio Gates to a combined 3 receptions for 25 yards, Floyd had 2 receptions for 98, Green 4 for 64, Royal 4 for 42, and Brown 5 for 27. So that clearly was we were able to shut down the big name guys that I have previously spoken about. If we can shut them down, then we can win this game. Unfortunately, we sort of shut them down, but in doing that, we allowed a lot more to go on around us. I've been an EJ backer since we drafted him. I remain behind him fully. Everybody's prone to have a bad game once in a while. And I know some people are maybe like, well, he does it more than once in a while. Everybody has bad games, whether you're EJ Manuel, whether you're Peyton Manning, whether you're Trent Edwards. And this was just one of those bad games. I hope next week we can sort of bounce back. We're playing Houston. Ryan Fitzpatrick's coming back to town. Maybe Arian Foster will still be out. Because Houston, everyone's terrified of that defense. But this is a team that just lost to the New York Giants, and everybody's been bashing the Giants for the last year about how terrible they've been. And the Giants' defense isn't... I wouldn't say the Giants' defense is any better than ours, and they picked off Fitzpatrick 3 times, and their offense scored 30 points against that defense. So I know everyone's afraid of J.J. Watt and Brian Cushing and etc., but I think the Texans should be afraid of Darius Williams. Maybe I'm getting off into a tangent too much. Sorry about that. But anyways, yeah, overall, ugly game. It'll be interesting to see how we recover from this. Hopefully we can bounce back, but overall not the performance that Bills fans were looking for this week.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad performance. It was a very, very ugly performance. The wide receivers ran the wrong routes often. They came off the field. Our seats were 8 rows up from the Bills sidelines, and you saw the facial expressions, and a fan described it as, wow, that whole team looks confused. Yes, it was confused. They walked off all puzzled, like, why'd the ball go there? Well, it's because you ran the wrong route for the 10th time in this game. They don't know what routes to run. And they're lucky that they got a chance to even throw the ball because the offensive line was dog shit. I've seen worse lines. Jacksonville's line sounds pretty bad. But the Bills' line, Ciantrell Henderson got taken out back behind the shed this week by Dwight Freeney. I know Dwight Freeney maybe 8 years ago was an All-Pro, but he's not an All-Pro anymore, and he took Ciantrell out back. I said Freddie had a good game. CJ Spiller did not. CJ Spiller probably had one play today that made fans, clap and be like, "Oh, that was a good play." Most of the other times it was like, "Oh, I'm dicking around. The line's doing so bad he can't even go more than 2 or 3 yards." EJ Manuel, it was funny. Garrett was like, it was 20-10, and we had just punted the ball to San Diego with like 5 minutes left or whatever. And I was like, "Garrett, do you want to go before everybody else leaves?" He's like, No, if they fumble the ball, it's only a 2-possession game. I said, okay, whatever. We stayed. We get the ball back, and then EJ takes that safety, and the stadium empties. And everybody's like, rule number 1 of being a quarterback, you don't throw the ball away in the end zone for intentional grounding. You do not do that. And you don't run around 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage trying to avoid a sack. I think the problem was the first time he did it today, it worked, and he got like a 30-yard gain to Chandler. When Chandler was kind of just standing there 4 yards off the line of scrimmage being like, yo, you don't have to run around like an idiot. If you just looked and opened your eyes, you'd see that I'm wide open this whole freaking time. But EJ Manuel can't see wide open wide receivers. He only sees covered ones. And that's one of his problems. Sammy Watkins couldn't get open for shit. Jason Verrett kept him under control today. It's a shame Fred Jackson's... he had a pass today. He had a pass attempt today, if you saw that in the box score. He had it. Sammy's just an idiot and doesn't see that there's no safety over the top. And all he had to do was run towards the middle of the field and he would have been wide fucking open for a touchdown. But no. He just pretty much stays glued to the cornerback like he's covering him. So, that's another mistake. People may say it's nitpicky, but when it happens, when you screw up 10 times in a game, it's solidified. You fucked up all game long. You fucked up all game long. And the defensive line got pressure under a handful of times today. I would say on 40 dropbacks, 5 times Phillip Rivers was under pressure. And that's not good enough. Like I said, Eddie Royal was like somebody to watch out for. Eddie Royal really didn't do much today. He had those 2 touchdowns, but they were both inside the red zone. It was the linebackers that can't cover the tight ends. Ladarius Green had quite the day. Antonio Gates went catchlet. Receptionless or yardless or whatever. But like Stephon Gilmore, it seemed half the time that they threw at Gilmore. And this guy's going to take the next step. He's supposed to be a Pro Bowl safe corner now because he was a first-round pick. Well, they're throwing right at him, and he's not making them think any different about it. He comes up to make a tackle behind the line of scrimmage today, and all of a sudden you just see his hand grab the face mask of the running back to try and take him down. And you're like, what a fucking idiot. Instead of a 5-yard loss, it's a 15-yard gain. And then he stays down, like, oh, my hand hurts. Yeah, it does hurt. I hope it really hurts. Because you stuck it in the guy's face mask. Like, they were bad. And being at the game, I got to see firsthand the fuck-ups. And it was like, those fuck-ups are really happening. They're not a myth. So I said it was the first true test against a good football team, and they lost. Their offense, overall, in short, to shorten it all up, the offense sucked all game long. The one touchdown, Fred Jackson broke 4 or 5 tackles on a broken screen pass. And, carried a Charger into the end zone to score. The defense, the first half, I think they forced them to punt 1 time on like 5 drives. And then after that, they kept them completely under control. So, second half defense, Defense got figured out. Malcolm Floyd, for some reason, had almost 100 yards receiving today because Leotis McKelvin also sucks. So I think we need a new corner. You know, there's this kid. Darn. Minnesota did not take him. Who did Minnesota take in the first round? Did they take Anthony Barr?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, never mind then. I don't know where I was going with that. But we need to figure out how to fix this defensive back problem because it's 2-1 is going to quickly become 3-2 when we play Detroit. And when you play New England, we're going to lose against New England both times because Tom Brady's going to be like, well, Stephon Gilmore, you still suck as much as last year. So, not going to slow me down. Okay, my rant's done. It's done. It was 8 minutes of just shit throwing. In the comments below, if you feel any different, you can try and oppose the opinion. I will more than gladly allow it. We appreciate comments. Comments are good. Last video we had 22 views. We really appreciate that. You know, views are good. First show back and we had 22 views. And now we'll talk about other NFL things because the Bills just made me sick to my stomach. We'll talk about any other games we saw. I'm pretty sure you guys both saw the Denver-Seattle game. Dylan, I'll let you go first. How much of the game did you watch? And, you know, what was your general feeling of the game consensus?
All right, for the Seattle versus Denver game, or Denver at Seattle, obviously exciting to see a Super Bowl rematch, and we were all hoping, and at least I was expecting it would be a lot closer than the Super Bowl, because I think that was, I don't want to say a fluke, but if you play Denver versus Seattle 10 times, a majority of the times, Peyton Manning's not going to get shut down like that. That being said, Seattle still won. It went to overtime. I did actually expect Denver to win this one. This time, I know I've said this before on the show, but it's probably been a long time. I'm not one to pick against players like Peyton Manning in games, regardless of who they're playing. But of course, facing Seattle, in Seattle, where they are absolutely dominant, is a tough task for any quarterback or any team in the league. And so it was, I don't know. Seattle got off to a pretty quick start, and obviously at halftime they were winning 17-3, and it was sort of looking like was it going to be another blowout again or something, but comes the fourth quarter, and Denver scored 17 points to force overtime. And Peyton Manning still had a solid game, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 31 for 49. Monte Ball got shut down in the rushing game, and even a couple carries when they tried Ronnie Hillman, he was bad too. Emmanuel Sanders, 149 receiving yards, so that was pretty impressive. Helped out one of my fantasy teams that really needs a comeback tomorrow night. But Wes Welker's first game back, 6 receptions, 60 yards, solid return. And when you look at the overall when you look at the box score and like the individual player statistics, like if you were to look at that without looking at touchdowns, you wouldn't get, I don't know. For me looking at it, if I didn't see the score or the touchdowns, I would have guessed that Denver had won this game, but the key things like Russell Wilson also had 2 touchdowns. Marshawn Lynch had a much better game rushing than anybody on the Broncos and had a touchdown. Marshawn Lynch also had a receiving touchdown. Lockett, who I didn't even know who he was, caught a touchdown. And then you look at the defense. Obviously both have great defenses, but Seattle is known for guys on their defense. Such, for example, Cam Chancellor had an interception and a forced fumble today because he's pretty much a beast. And I wanted Denver to win. I don't root for Seattle, and that's mostly because of Andy. But I don't know. It was definitely an interesting game, more entertaining than the Super Bowl, especially there at the end, that fourth quarter, and a little bit less so of overtime. But that last couple minutes in the fourth, or the last little while of the fourth quarter, was really entertaining in my opinion. And well, again, in my opinion, it's unfortunate that Denver ended up losing this one.
I can't tell if he's there or not.
Chris, what was your thoughts on the Denver-Seattle game?
I didn't get to watch too much of it. Probably half the first quarter and then the last minute drive of, and then the overtime. I was watching Sabres game, which we might talk about later. Basically, Denver's game. They didn't really play too hot. Monte Ball had a fumble on the first play. For the most part, for the most part, Demaryius Thomas was pretty much kept under in check. He only had 4 catches for 30 yards. He got a couple nice plays on that final drive, and then he got the 2-point conversion. But Seattle was, the better team today. I enjoyed seeing Emmanuel Sanders run up and down the field, catching 11 balls for over 130 yards. Glad I got him. Playing in Seattle, you have a tough task going on. They lost last week. They almost lost today, but it wasn't really that close. Peyton just kind of made it look like it was closer. I don't know. Seattle isn't a very good team this year. They've got a strong defense, but they don't really have their passing game. I just read a stat. Hold on a second. Okay. Last season, the Seahawks had the top-rated defense, and they only allowed 172 yards a game last season in the passing game. This year, so far, they've allowed 225 yards per game in the passing game. That's a significant increase, obviously. So, Seattle's defense isn't that good. Richard Sherman's not a shutdown corner like everyone thinks. Keenan Allen showed that last week. I don't know exactly who he was covering this week, but he was basically just covering that one side of the field. Those happen. Seattle's not that good. Denver, they should have won this, but they weren't ready to play, I don't think. So, yeah. That's my thought.
Well, I feel like I have to support Seattle. By looking at the stats, because I didn't watch any of the game except the 2-point conversion to end the fourth quarter, because then I started setting up the hangout. Seattle had more yards, had a 4-to-1 ratio in rushing yards. If there is something for certain that I know about Denver, is Monte Ball is not going to be no Sean Moreno this year. Seattle's defense is still elite. This was the Super Bowl that wasn't, and that these teams should be this close. But I also believe these are two of arguably the top 3 teams in the league, and it's hard to say who's third because, frankly, you would say the 49ers, but the 49ers lost to the Bears and the Cardinals. Drew Stanton at quarterback. The 49ers lost to Drew fucking Stanton. How can they go to the fucking Super Bowl? They can't. You just, I guess it's the Panthers. I guess it's just going to have to be the Panthers because for some reason the Panthers are the only elite team left that has shown we're better than you think we are because everyone else has played down. The Broncos, lost to Seattle, and then they nearly blew a huge lead to Andrew Luck and the Colts. And, I don't know, Russell played good today. Marshawn Lynch had 120 yards rushing, looks like. Sherman was on D. Thomas. 4 catches. Sherman's not invincible. I feel like they lost Walter Thurmond. Although Browner didn't play last year, they don't have Browner anymore. And the loss of their second corner from last year, and when you take Browner into account, it's their second and third corner if they have a healthy roster. I don't quite agree with this whole dominate one side of the field thing like they have with Sherman right now. I feel like you should just man Sherman up against their top wide receiver, and if he's really that good, he'll shut him down. I still think Seattle is the best defense in the league. Nobody else has said otherwise, that they have a better defense. We'll see Carolina right now. They're playing Pittsburgh. It's still the first quarter. I don't know if Pittsburgh's doing anything to them, but Carolina right now is the only team that has shown that they're playing better than they should. So that's the thing. That's my little defense of Seattle, I guess. I think they outplayed Denver today. There was a very close game, and if you look at the yards, they were within 50 yards of each other, but Denver had 2 turnovers and Seattle had 1. That in itself, I would say, is a difference. Denver could have won this in regulation if they don't have, I believe, a turnover by Peyton Manning to Cam Chancellor to force him to have to make an incredible 1-minute, 80-yard drive to score to win the game. Tie the game. So, I feel that's the facts in the matter from my perspective. So, yeah, it's a shame that wasn't prime time. That should have been prime time instead of Panthers, Steelers, or Bears, Jets. Like, who the fuck picks these games? All right. But yeah, how about Drew Stanton? Drew Stanton won against the 49ers. Cardinals are 3-0. It would have been nice to say Bills are 3-0. I would have been as surprised. But, hey, Drew Stanton's playing better than E.J. Manuel right now. Ha, 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 ha. All right, Chris, are you still there? I know you just... Okay, you are there. You watched the hockey game. And because you're not using it as your final word, what was your perspective on the first game of the season for the Sabres, first game of Sam Reinhart in the Sabres jersey?
You know, we looked okay. I didn't like how we had the lines. Like, I like the Reinhardt Armia, but I don't like Delorier with Reinhardt. Delorier is a good, third, fourth liner, but he's not a scoring winger. We should have had, like, Larson or someone up there with him. Or even Grigorenko. I know Grigorenko's a center as well, but he can play wing. And that would have been, I think, Armia, Reinhardt, and Grigorenko would be a ridiculously great line if they all play as well as they can. I was surprised to see Ovechkin was playing for the Capitals as well as Backstrom. We didn't really have any of our top guys out there. I liked Reinhardt played okay. I didn't really see much. I watched most of the first period, most of the second. It was kind of a pretty boring game, honestly. There wasn't a lot of shots, and the shots that were on net weren't very good. The Capitals had a bunch of chances. Nathan Lewin looked really good. Zadorov was using his body, and he looked pretty damn good. But you could tell my favorite player that was out on the ice today was also the favorite player of a lot of the coaches and stuff from the Traverse City games. Rasmus Ristolainen. He dropped 30 pounds over the off season. And from what he described as his baby fat, he got a lot faster, and he's a lot stronger now. And you could tell by the way he's skating that he looks good. Risto is going to be our top defenseman in the future. I know Myers is still pretty young, but I think Risto is going to be a lot better than him defensively. I don't think he's going to be a better offensive defenseman, but Risto will be the better all-around defenseman, I think. He made a mistake. Well, he took a chance to try and get a pass to an open guy. Someone else read it. One of the Capitals players read it, took it from him, but Risto responded ridiculously quickly and got down and read the pass that guy was trying to make perfectly and intercepted that pass as well, blocking off a scoring chance. And, that play right there just showed me, wow, that's all right. This guy's for real. So, I'm excited about that. Zadorov looked okay. Chad Ruedel looked like Chad Ruedel. Reinhardt didn't really do much, though. It was kind of disappointing, but, it's a preseason. So we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah. Looking at the box score real quick. By the way, the next game the Sabres play preseason will be home against the Hurricanes Tuesday at 7. Wow, the game against the Leafs is on TV on next Sunday. Hopefully it shouldn't be blacked out because it's home for Toronto. Looking at the box score here, the leader in shots was Johan Larsson. Leader in ice time was Ristolainen. Was Andre Benoit with Ristolainen?
I do believe so.
Yeah, it looks like it. They both played very similar amount of time.
Ruedel was with Zadorov, and then Weber and some other defenseman. I didn't know who it was.
The guy who got in the fight, Tyson Strachan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Zach Delpy played a lot of minutes. Looks like also 1, 2. Wow, we have a lot of centers. If you look at the box score, we have a lot of centers. Like 6 or 7. All right, I'm not gonna try and babble. Yeah, so Tuesday, Sabres play again. Maybe we'll talk about the Sabres again on Wednesday. Dylan, do you have any opinion on Chris's take on that game? I know you didn't watch it because you were you probably didn't watch it because you were watching the football game. But do you have any opinion on what Chris took from the game? Maybe your own comments about Ristolainen?
Well, yeah, you're right. I didn't see any of the game. I was watching football. Not unfortunately, but I was watching football, so I didn't really get a chance to see any of it. I had heard that Ristolainen had lost some weight in this off season, and I didn't know much into it other than that. So I was really glad when I heard Chris say that. It seems like he's in a lot better shape and could be on our team this year and be a big impact going forward for us. We spent a first-round pick on him, someone we obviously want to see succeed, and I'm excited to see what he can do this year. I know a lot of people have high hopes. I don't know if I forgot. I don't know. We've discussed this prior during the off season, but I don't know if it's a for sure thing that Ristolainen was going to make the NHL team for the entire season, but if he impressed tonight and continues to throughout preseason, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. So it's great to hear about that. I did hear Reinhart looked a little slow and stuff, but he did get a little more comfortable as the game went on. So I'm sure I think that it could just be part of getting back into actual preseason game playing and still getting into the shape for the season or stuff like that. So we did lose 1-0, but we can take away a couple positives. I mean, most of us aren't expecting to be the best team in the NHL or even close to that this year. So whether it's a win or a loss, it's always good to hear about the positives of our young players and the steps they're taking to get better.
Yeah, it's good to have it's good to, we talked about this for months, and then we kind of just stopped talking altogether. You got a good young core. Connor McDavid will just be the cherry on top. Yes, Connor McDavid. All right, I know Chris wants to jet. Well, we're gonna try and hustle this out here. We gotta do our final words. Our little spiels about things that we didn't talk about on the show that we believe need to be talked about. So, Chris, what do you have for your final word?
I've mentioned this before in one of the earlier shows. I think I talked about it at least a little bit about Ray Lewis, and most of us know what he was alleged to do, and most people think he got away with murder, but they never really prove anything. And Ray Lewis had an opinion and a little bit of something to say about the Ray Rice situation on, I think it was ESPN. He was talking about Ray Rice, and he had said in the past, he's disappointed and it's sad and blah blah. But he said I don't know when exactly he said, but I got the thing 8 hours ago, so I'm assuming today he said it. He said, and I quote, "There's some things you can cover up, some things you can't." Wow.
Mm.
That is impressive, sir. Are you trying to tell me that you can cover up some things? You know, just sprinkle little stuff on there, cover up some things you don't want people to know about. Like murder that you did, most likely. Good thing he couldn't cover up beating his wife, though. Because that's murder. That's don't want people seeing that. Better cover that up. But shh, shh. Yeah, that's something that he said. He's probably gonna end up regretting. There's some things you can cover up, some things you can't. Ray Lewis. That should go down when he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. That should go down as like his quote. Hmm. And people wonder. I know Mark, tremendous fan of Ray Lewis. I have literally no respect for Lewis. I hate him. Great player, an amazing player, one of the best middle linebackers of all time. But he is something. Whoever's next.
Dylan, you are up, sir.
Alright, so today I'm going to take a small change of pace from my normal baseball talk, because I'm sure we'll have enough of that in the coming episodes from me. But someone I'd like to talk about is the Heisman winner, Jameis Winston. And he was suspended originally for half of a game for yelling something vulgar in the student union at Florida State or wherever, some cafeteria or something somewhere. But it was later expanded to an entire game. And people are saying that it's significantly hurt his draft stock. And I mean, I'll admit he's a very talented athlete. He's a good football player, but off the field issues have to come into consideration at some point. And even when they were suiting up for the game and in the pregame, he showed up on the sideline, full pads, full uniform, and the coach sent him back in to the locker room to get changed. And I applaud Jimbo Fisher for doing that. I think that was definitely the right thing to do. I don't know why, if he was suspended, I don't know why he ever thought that he could come out in full uniform anyways. It just doesn't make sense to me. But he needs to realize like what's going on here. Like the way the NFL is going, like you see, I mean, I don't want to make this into too much of a stretch, but you see what's going on right now with Greg Hardy, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, all these players, and you have to start thinking that teams are going to start looking at players. If there's any doubt that they're going to have off the field issues, they might say, just don't take him, because I mean, Adrian Peterson, what was he? He was like a 7th overall pick or something. Ray Rice was an early 2nd round pick. These players were pretty highly touted, and they had successful careers, but ultimately the off-the-field issues came up, and teams might not want to deal with that, especially, and it's like, Jameis Winston needs, as a Heisman winner, he should be you would think he would be a little bit better about this, but Tim Tebow has addressed it more recently, who Tim Tebow, we all know, also won a Heisman, and he said that Jameis Winston has to understand that people are watching him. Some kids are going to look up to him, and people are going to see what he does, and some people will try to follow him, and he's responsible to set forth a good example in the league. And I don't know. I know leading up to this year's draft, people like Mel Kiper were saying that if Winston was in this draft, he would easily be first overall pick. And now we're looking at next year like, who knows what's going to happen. And personally, I think he's going to take a pretty significant fall. I know that Mark's final word last week was about teams looking to rehabilitate players and saying like, oh, if they've paid their debt, we can rehabilitate them, and that looks good on us. But there's got to be a point where it's like you have to realize like what you're doing, when it's right, when it's wrong, and whether you may or may not be blowing the chance to be a successful National Football League player or somebody who ends up eventually without a team. And these guys think they're untouchable when in reality they're not. And so I know this is just the most recent example of off the field issues for Winston. He was accused of sexual assault a couple of years ago, and there's a few other things. He stole crab legs or something like that. That's always a good one. But he's got to get his head on straight and realize that if he wants to be given the opportunity in the NFL, then he has to start acting like he can handle the responsibility of being an NFL quarterback, or else may not see much of him once his college career's up. And that's my final word today.
Dude stole crab legs. He really did. What a fruitcake. That's a first overall pick if I've ever seen one. Talk about football players doing stupid things. It's not like his wife pissed him off. It's not like his kid pissed him off. It's not like he was like, I have to get high right now. He's like, no, I've been craving some crab legs, and I'm just going to take them. I'm just going to take them. Nobody's going to stop me. Well, guess what, Jameis Winston? You got stopped. So that's the thing. My final word is NASCAR related, as always. Today was race number 2 of the 10-race chase to the championship. Joey Logano won. His teammate Brad Keselowski had won last week, so both Penske Fords are both locked into the next round of the playoffs. Only the top 12 cars move on to the second round. There was a lot of setbacks for drivers today. I believe there were 4 or 5 drivers that got into accidents that were battling for a championship. Jeff Gordon was running 6th with 6 laps left, essentially about to lock himself in by points, and blew a right front tire and finished like 25th. So he has to battle. But, I'm looking at the standings right now, following the race, and A.J. Allmendinger, he has no business. I didn't say this on the show because I didn't talk about the chase, but I said A.J. Allmendinger has no business being in the NASCAR playoffs. His team is trash. He won one race because he's a great road racer, great road course racer. Won that race, got into the playoffs. Well, right now, he's locked into he's in position, if he finishes decent at Dover next week, to move on to the second round in a situation where he was quoted after the last race of the regular season to say, come on, we're not here to win. We're here just to drive around. Our sponsors are going to be so happy. My owners are going to be so happy because we have no business being in this playoff, and we're going to be in it. And we're just going to have fun with it. And they have no pressure, and they might move on to the second round. They may be the Cinderella of this NASCAR playoff. I don't expect them to win a championship, but, taking a spot from a team that's multi-million-dollar funded is pretty impressive. That's like that's like a 13 seed at the NCAA tournament upsetting a 4 seed. It's a big deal. So that's my final word. Logano moved on. They raced at Dover this week. We'll talk about it more on Wednesday. And with that, that is the end of the Golden Sports Report, episode 84. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already and you like the show, you probably should. Although you don't have to, because we keep to a regular time period of when we have shows. We will have shows Wednesdays and Sundays at 8 o'clock if we have a show. Usually they're anywhere from 1 to 2 hours long at most. If you liked it, like the video, share it with your friends. If you have a differing opinion or you agree or anything with us, comment below. We'll talk about it on the next show. We've always said that throughout our 84 episodes, and only a handful of times have we actually had an opportunity to talk about our comments. So if you have any comments, comment below. And thank you for watching. Bye.
Peace out.
Adios.